this consciousness has never become into any form of phenomenal existence. What we understand by being born, that means assuming a form, existing by itself in itself. It is not the case. Nothing at phenomenal level, it's not a level even, exists. There is only the absolute existence, which is ever Nisanga, Asanga, Asparsha. Another approach, which is also there in the Advaita-Vedanta tradition, that is the Asparsha Yoga, is also a form of Nididhyasana. In the same way that self-inquiry is also a form, a mode of Nididhyasana. So what is Asparsha Yoga? Maybe you have never heard about the term. Sparsha means contact, relation or touch. Asparsha, no touch, no contact, no relation. And you find this concept of asparsha already in the Upanishad. But Asparsha Yoga comes for the first time in the writings of the Grand Guru of Adi Shankaracharya, the first philosopher of the tradition of Advaita, Sri Gaudapadacharya. That is the 6th century. He wrote a very extraordinary text called the commentaries on the Mandukya Upanishad. We call it the Mandukya Karika. So in the Mandukya Karika, you find this concept of Asparsha Yoga. So it is the yoga of no relation, of no touch, of no contact. Because if you leave awareness alone, so awareness, so to say, comes back to itself and comes naturally to its own recognition, as it were, because awareness ever knows itself. But somehow it was lost in the objects. So this is, in a nutshell, what is this Asparsha Yoga about. So in this approach, Asparsha, there are two stages actually. The first stage is a stage of withdrawal. Like in any yoga path, as it is mentioned, by the way, in the Yoga Sutras, you need to withdraw from the objects of the senses. And here the objects are external as well as internal. The external objects are the objects of senses. The internal objects are the inner mentations, the objects of the mind. Eventually, everything is only but mentation, is vritti. Or what you perceive, or what you think, it's all vrittis, no difference. But we have established this category, artificial category. There are external objects on one side and internal objects on the other. But all there is actually, phenomenally speaking, is these fluctuations in the mind, mentations. Mentations. So we need to withdraw our attention in these objects. Because these objects eventually are objects of attraction or objects of aversion. We speak here about the compulsive fluctuations, those who come at random, mechanically, compulsively, not those that you decide to think for a practical purpose. This vritti, the practical vrittis, are no problem at all. The problem is these uninvited vrittis, those who come without invitation. So you need to withdraw your attention from all these objects. So you see, this is really the yogic approach that is mentioned in the Yoga Sutra, this pratyahara. And how you will proceed for this withdrawal, how can you do it? Because you understand that all there is in this phenomenal world is misery, dukkham, sarvam dukkham. There's a clear understanding of that. So for that you need discernment, viveka, and you need vairagya, dispassion. Dispassion is based on your reflection on all your experiences about suffering. So you become detached through deep understanding about this world. There is dispassion in you, and so you need discernment also. Plus, you need also a good concentration. You need not to be distracted from this practice. So you need one-pointedness, ekagrata. We call it samadhana in Vedanta, the power to focus. So then you withdraw awareness from the objects of awareness, and you reach a stage of inner abidance. Inner abidance, anusmriti. Smriti means remembrance. So anusmriti, it's more like recollection. Inner abidance, self-abidance. So that is an important state. You cannot go into the second stage without being first fixed, established in this inner flow. So that is the preparation. And now, in stage 2, comes the nididhyasana. You remember what I said first? Nididhyasana, it's about keeping in mind a thought of the Absolute, a concept that speaks to you, that resonates in you. It's a pointer, so of course you should not stop at the pointer. But it's a medium, because the Absolute being not an object, you cannot meditate on something. It's more like a nothing. So then how to proceed? So you see the mind being wandering all the time, being distracted, being entertaining so many objects. Needs also a last and ultimate object, a vritti, the ultimate vritti, excluding all other objects as a means of concentration to jump into the unknown, into that which the mind cannot grasp. So the Absolute cannot be perceived. It's not perceivable by the mind. It's not an object. So the mind cannot even experience it, cannot conceive it, cannot grasp it, cannot experience it. It's beyond. Yet we need to come out of the grip of the mind. So we use a last vritti for that, antya vritti, the last one. And at the end of this inner abidance process, that ultimate subtle vritti will also subside. And then all there is that seamless, transcendental reality, beyond the understanding of mind. So this is how it works. Because that reality is ever present, and it's shining in us in the form of awareness. It is self-luminous. It doesn't need another light to become evident. You don't have to bring anything to illumine the self. It is itself light, the light of presence, the light of beingness. So you don't need to do any effort. It is revealing itself spontaneously. It is self-evident, self-luminous. Because of that, because it's a swaprakash, because of that, all you need to do is to bring the mind in that state of inner tranquility and that state of steadiness, because it's about being focused. I can't. You should not interrupt this process. It is constant contemplation, unbroken constant contemplation. So the second stage. The first stage is the withdrawal, out of deep understanding and loss of interest, nirvedam, loss of interest. I come to that spontaneous state of abidance, where I am not related, associated with anything. So, nisanga or asanga, that unrelatedness, unassociatedness, is so important because that is what asparsha means. No association whatsoever with anything, with thought and anything whatsoever. No association. So I am now abiding in that no associatedness. And it becomes effortless. So I am in the waiting room, like Zoom, waiting for the darshan, Atma darshan. So that is stage 2. You see, there are clearly 2 stages. The first stage is based on effort, and that effort turns into no effort. It turns into a spontaneous flow of abidance. You don't have to do much. It is going on within you, where you are not associated with anything, asparsh. But that is only the preliminary. Now comes stage 2. Stage 2 is really nididhyasana. It is contemplation of Brahman, or call it Atman, not through a concept of Brahman. That was the vritti that we practice in nididhyasana, what we call the practice of nididhyasana. But here, it is precisely that feeling of not being associated with anything. And what is that? It is not associated with anything. Consciousness. Consciousness. That consciousness, when it is pure and nisanga, asanga, it is emptiness. It is emptiness. It is the vacuity. And now we understand how this concept of asparsh yoga is really part of the whole philosophy of the first philosopher of Advaita, that is Sri Gaudapada. Because the whole teaching that you find in the Karika, it's about the philosophy of no origination. Ajativada, Ajativada, the Aja or Ajata, the unborn. What does it mean? What does it mean, this concept? It's very interesting because the ashram is called Ajatananda. That means the bliss of the unborn. Name of all. And what does it mean? This consciousness has never become into any form of phenomenal existence. What we understand by being born, that means assuming a form, existing by itself in itself. It is not the case. Nothing at phenomenal level, it's not a level even, exists. There is only the absolute existence, which is ever nisanga, asanga, asparsha. So you see that asparsha is totally part of this vision of Gaudapada that he transmitted to us. And that Sri Ramana Maharshi also adopted, not officially, because he didn't want to take a step like, because you have basically three theories regarding the manifestation and the world, or what we call creation. And Ajatananda, that is the one proposed by Sri Gaudapada. But you have two more theories, but it is not our subject today. But Sri Ramana Maharshi says that yes, actually all these three theories, part of Advaita, are true. They are just theories, they're just opinions, because that is what we can say ultimately. But we cannot absolutize it, because it's only at the level of concepts. But we see that in his teaching, when he mentioned Ajatananda, we see that definitely he accepts it. So asparsha, the concept of asparsha, no touch, no association, no relation, is really part of this greater vision of the unborn. That means that which has never come into any form of existence, because it is transcendental. When we say existence, we mean something that is there, phenomenally. What about that which is absolutely there with no existence? Existence. That is absolute existence. That was never born. That is timeless. That is the undifferentiated consciousness. That is the nirguna. So you see that asparsha yoga, the path of no association, is a direct path to the realization of the nirguna. Because Advaita is about that ultimate realization of the nirguna. Nirguna Brahman. So it is enough to withdraw our attention, awareness, from the objects of attention where it is stuck in the form of identification. That's a false association, a mistaken association, because most human beings, they live at that level. They have mistaken themselves for the contents of the mind, for the objects with which the awareness is associated due to identification. So they can't see what they are. So this awareness is totally overlooked. It's only by withdrawing the attention, the conscious attention, awareness, from the objects, that attention comes back to itself. That is a state of abidance. You see? Instead of abiding on the objects of attention, now you abide in the attention itself. Awareness resting in itself, with itself. You understand the expression to be aware of awareness? Aware of awareness. How is it possible? Because awareness is never an object. So to be aware of awareness means to be awareness, to rest as awareness, without entertaining any object of it. The object belongs to mind. So we need to live awareness alone. It's very close to the path of yoga, because we mentioned that yesterday in our reading of Ashtavakra Gita, that aloneness, kevalya. If you live awareness alone, with no association, asparsha, with any object whatsoever, that means with mind actually, then awareness will spontaneously, effortlessly recognize itself. So you see, this practice of abidance, self-abidance, is the threshold for the shift of recognition, self-recognition to happen. But you need to be in that inner state of samadhana, that means inner recollection, anusmriti, and you need to practice this inner contemplation uninterruptedly. So then you will be in this flow, that inner flow of abidance. And when you are in this inner flow, then you are very close to the revelation, the shift. So you need steadiness. You need to be in that shanta, that inner tranquility. That means no fluctuation whatsoever. Now the mind is free from the modifications, to some extent, of course, because unless you recognize your true nature, there will always be fluctuation, but less, they don't disturb you. You see? Inner recollection, you need one-pointedness, you need this steadiness, you need this tranquility. And the self, which is awareness, which is ever present, it doesn't come and go, it is immovable, doesn't change, doesn't move, ever present to itself, ever the same, timeless, and ever revealing itself, ever shining. So this awareness will automatically bring about recognition, self-recognition. It was ever recognized to itself, but the mind was obstructing this process. So now it will be directly recognized. So you see that Asparsha has really two aspects, we can say stages. The first one is definitely the withdrawal. So that is the yogic part. That is pratyahara. Pratyahara is, the fifth limb, and it is a prerequisite for what? For the three antahanga. Antahanga. You see the inner limbs. That means what? That means dharana, that is concentration, contemplation, dhyan, and samadhi. Without pratyahara, this withdrawal from all objects, we say of the senses, but it's more than that. It is from all meditations. Don't associate awareness with the vrittis. Dissociate yourself. Asanga, nisanga. You see? So you have to put yourself in this mode of asparsha. This is the direct path. Don't associate yourself with anything. What you do in meditation, no relation with thoughts. This also you have to bring to every moment when you are in the wakened state and you are moving. Do not associate yourself with anything, anyone. That means you live a life, but you remain deep in yourself, asanga. Don't associate yourself. Any form of association is more like formal, but you are not involved there mentally. You see what I mean? You can have a relation, but you are detached. The moment there is attachment, you are associated because you are identified. Remain centered in pure awareness. Remain centered in your pure presence. Don't bring anyone or anything there. So you see the first aspect of asparsha is the withdrawal. And the second aspect, the first being the prerequisite, the introduction, the second aspect is definitely the constant abidance there. But the infinite here doesn't use, for the realization of the infinite, we don't use the medium of a thought of infinity. What we use is that mode of unrelatedness, unassociatedness. And so we go straight in the nirguna. And you see how it is matching also with the approach, the theory, the philosophy of Sri Gaudapada. Because it's all about nirguna, the nirguna. the whole commentary on the Kahika, the unborn. So the no association is directly related to the unborn, and eventually the practice becomes nididhyasana, an abidance, a contemplation into that. But instead of a thought, it's also here a feeling, ultimate feeling. It is more that the fact that we feel unassociated. So that is our approach of the nirguna. Don't remain associated with anything. Be alone in awareness. Don't add anything to awareness. Don't bring anything. Don't import anything in awareness. Be exclusively in this awareness. Abide there. To the exclusion of anything else. So this is the particular mode of nididhyasana on the path of asparsha. It's a direct path. But what you need is to be enough detached from the worldly realities. So these are prerequisites. Like Shankaracharya gives us a list. So Vivek and Vairagya definitely are prerequisites. Otherwise you cannot come to this flow of inner abidance. It will not come to you. You need to be free from any interest for objects. You see, when you deprive your attention from the objects of attention, that means the asanga process, and then at the same time you eliminate all wrong associations, because you dissociate awareness from their habitual objects of identification. So all these associations with body and mind, which was the cause of identification, now are being removed. As we said yesterday, that feeling of being someone, the jivan bhavana, now turns into the feeling of being Brahman, and you create a new vasana, the Brahman vasana. So that is part of the process that will bring you to liberation. So we need to deconstruct the mind. So that's why it is the reverse path. Go back to the source. It is you. You are there. You have gone too far in the imagination of what you are not. So by removing all associations, you lose slowly, gradually, this sense of identification to body-mind. Because that was a strong association. I am this. Aham idam. That's the first one and the source of all the suffering. You're free. You're not the body. You can relax.